Hello, and we are here now with all 41 of this year's field. Now, we're going to review the field as they are for the 2020 Eurovision Song Contest, whether or not it goes ahead based on the current situation in Europe. But we do have 41 entries, no matter what. This is this year's field, and it's time for us to kind of go through and pick out the highlights. So, without any further ado, the field. I'm going to keep it really simple. 2019 was very weak until the last 2 weeks, in which we got about 20 entries, which were varying from good to exceptional. This year, we were in a similar position where there was a lot of hoping that the last 20 entries would be in that boat of good to exceptional. And unfortunately, they're not all in that boat. So for me, 2020 is a weaker year to 2019. I've said a couple of times throughout this season, it's 2011 2.0. Someone has to win. We're going to go into the contest like we did in 2011 with a number of options. I mean, even in 2011, we thought Lena could do the double at one point, which I think tells you quite the struggle we had that year. And not that Lena 2.0 is bad, just tells you the point is we were looking at an unprecedented in the modern age. I think 2020 is weaker. I have this year I have 17, maybe 18 songs that I think are okay. And that is it. Everything else for me is binned. So we're going to get to a grand final where there are entries in it that I don't want to sit through. And for me, that shows the level of the competition. Whereas last year, I really enjoyed the grand final and I had maybe one toilet break song throughout the whole final. And this year, that won't be the case. Costa?
Well, I kind of disagree. I think this year is as strong, if not slightly stronger than the last two contests in terms of the overall field. I thought 2018 was the pits, if I'm honest. There are about 20 songs that I find insufferable because even when I scroll up to like my top 25, there are still songs like Croatia and Latvia, which I would never think of listening to again. And I still consider songs like Alexander Rybak, that monstrosity, Iceland's that year, are still there, and it's just and also, I really disagreed with a lot of the results that year as well. So I think 2018 just reminds me that it could be a lot worse. By contrast, there are a lot of songs I enjoyed this year quite a lot, and there's a lot of really fun songs that I understand and I get and I connect to, which makes a massive difference. I feel like if The Roop, if Little Big, and if Davi and Co, and I guess Effendi as well, if these are the kind of songs that you find off-putting, then this year may not be for you. But if you can understand how great it is that we have countries bringing fun entries for the first time in a while and having that dynamism, I have a lot of appreciation for how eclectic the field is. And there's some other songs that I hold very dear to me already, and I know that in a few years' time I'm gonna really still love and cherish. Whereas last year, only Portugal is in that tier for me, and I guess Ukraine, but that doesn't really count because we've never made it to the contest. But then I mean, guess I love Cyprus as well. But
I'm just going to interject very quickly with how is that not in your list of eclectic songs from last year?
You just reminded me. I think it's eclectic, but I think that was like a diamond in a heap of fine. I think 2019 was fine. I prefer the songs we have this year, which is unpopular opinion, but there's a lot more that I'm listening to on repeat, which like in the whole run of last year's contest, there weren't that many songs I was listening to on repeat. I enjoyed them, but in themselves, there's a lot more songs that I'm enjoying. Anyway, that's kind of my take. I know that's quite an unpopular opinion. Tim, what do you think?
Ooh, I mean, if you're comparing 2019 to 2020, I lost a lot more in comparing the last year to this year's for me it's weaker, definitely. I can maybe tell you there could be a winner on there, but it wasn't like last year where it was obvious it was going to be Duncan. But for me, I can, like Nathan said earlier, and I can see this going to be a 2011 2.0 because I can tell you, okay, country A is going to be my winner, but then I'm going to switch over again because I can't say to myself that that's definitely it until we get to May. Looking at it, it is wide open. I mean, let's just going to say that but the semis are going to be a bloodbath regardless of what you think of it, because I can't give you a top 10 in those two just like that. It's not going to be obvious until we get to, well, if we get to when we get to Rotterdam. So a 2011 2.0 and no outright winner as of right now. How about you, Julian?
For me, I agree that it's a very wide open year like 2011, but song quality wise, I think 2020 is much stronger than 2011. For 2011, there are maybe like 10 songs I would want to listen to, and for 2020, I find that there are about like 25 songs that I put in my playlist that I listen to regularly. And for compared to 2019, I think in 2019 there were, for example, I think Duncan would have won this year as well. Maybe Stoldy would have won. There were like a few songs that were better than the songs we had this year, but 2019 only had a small amount of these great songs. Like everything that was outside of the top 10, maybe with a few exceptions, was meh for me. It did not a lot for me. While I think that 2020, if all my personal favorites make it, the whole final could be full of songs that I would listen to still after the contest. And I think the fact that it's not one front runner makes the competition even more interesting. Like it changes every day, and they're not in the whole community. You don't have these fights between the fans of one song and the other, because you have like 10 possible winners. So I enjoy the running up to the contest a little bit more than last year.
I think it's interesting because last year became the two-horse race I expected, and I think most people expected, between Duncan and Mahmood. I don't think it was much of a surprise, really, that's how it turned out. As it stands, I think it's a five-horse race this year, and this will seg very nicely, Costa, would you like to know, into our second portion of our personal favourites. I think it's a five-horse race. I'm going to quickly touch on the fact that Costa said, we've got 4 fun entries. 3 of those 4 fun entries are in my top 10, and the other one is binned. But the position I'm in is that we needed that fun. We were in a position where without entries like Iceland and Russia, we were really going to be in some form of state. And I'd actually throw Serbia into a mix of fun. I know it's an ethnic pop song, but actually it's fun in a way that Shady Lady was fun. And we needed that in 2008. So it's a 5-horse race. I think it's
Latvia
Russia,
as well. I chucked Samantha Tina.
Yeah.
Latvia,
great.
And that's in my top 10 too. Russia, Iceland, Switzerland, Germany, Bulgaria. I think it's those 5. Someone can scream at me if you think not. And the reason I haven't put Lithuania in there is very simple. Little Big have taken the exact same market that Lithuania were pitching at, in the exact same region of the world, with a bigger act, with a bigger reach, with a bigger viral hit. We've already seen Russia in the first few days is like trending across Europe on YouTube. So for me, Russia has just taken Lithuania's vote and forced its way into that field where Lithuania had sat very nicely for a number of weeks. And I think they've just been shafted by their neighbours, unfortunately. But I really think Germany have the most accessible radio hit that people who are tuning in once will go, oh, wow, that's something I'd listen to. And that will mature a vote. I think Switzerland has the best voice in the whole competition. We've seen him on The Voice, and it's exceptional. And Iceland is that piece of halfway between fun and accessible. I think people will get Iceland and it being I think people will get Iceland maybe slightly more than Russia, but people will be in on the Russian joke, whereas Iceland feels like it doesn't feel like a joke to some people, but it really is, and I think it takes everybody on board. And Bulgaria, I think, is the outlier, that because it sounds like a song that could be sung by a number of very popular professional females at the minute. Not that Victoria's not professional, but global superstars. I think that's where it kind of comes into the mix. But for me, honourable mentions also to Norway, which is still sitting pretty as my number 2 after all this time. They could just stage that so simply that it just wipes the competition. Everyone else does something that's so OTT that Norway just sits there pretty and goes, we know what we're doing. And the other one is Australia. Costuming somewhat aside, I still think that is one of the better pop songs of the competition.
I think for that, we should still count the Mamas from Sweden in. I think it's a better song than Too Late for Love, which almost won the jury vote in ESC last year. They are more fun, they are more accessible to the televoters, and as of right now, they barely have any staging. They're just walking around on stage, but if they get it right in May, or if it's happening in May, then I think the Mamas could still be a contender for the win overall.
Tim?
Favorites. I agree with Nathan as the fact that Bulgaria is up there really high. I know the Billie Eilish comparisons are inevitable.
I wasn't going to say it, Tim. I wasn't going to say it.
Well, I said it. But out of the songs this year, it was Bulgaria was the one that gave me the same vibes that Duncan did last year. So hence why it's on the top. Another mention would be Destiny with All of My Love. Oh my God. The minute she got that chance, and she did not let us down. Obviously, I think Malta's going for that win. And finally, one little thing, because I know most people just don't like this person, but I lied by Vincent. I just like the Poppy and Bruno Mars kind of which I know you guys don't like. So yeah, those are my 3 favorites.
So this is an interesting thing. I think the context with which the contest may or may not be going ahead in May is going to be super influential on what people vote for. So my personal favorite is actually Ukraine, which I haven't mentioned yet. I just like something a bit. I just like when a country goes full force. Like this is our music, but in a way that's kind of so bombastic and high impact that it feels so. It's a dynamic and exciting, and grabbed me in a way that Telenovage did last year. And I know it's very abrasive. I know it probably won't qualify from the first semi, but I have a lot of appreciation for that song, and it's kind of distanced itself from the pack, and it's for me just already going to be one of my top favorites in the years to come. I love ballads, so I'm really enjoying the quality ballads we have from the likes of Switzerland, Bulgaria, Italy, Norway, which I do have so much time for, and I think you're right, Nathan, that it's really stood the test of time and still completely takes my breath away whenever I listen to it.
Yeah.
I think that the Mamas will do very well, and I think a lot of people, when they get over the fact that Costa did not win Melodifestivalen, will realise that this is actually one of the few entries that I think will score very highly in both the televote and the jury vote. It's pure quality from a musical perspective. It's got one of the best hooks of the contest, I think. And I think in May, with all that's happening, people are going to pick up the phone and vote for something so unashamedly positive and uplifting. And for that reason, I do think, to segue into the dark horses, I think Sweden cannot be counted out. And if, for example, it comes to the fact that the contest is transmitted from countries broadcasting the performances, I think Sweden have a polished entry that we know looks good on stage. It's not staged very highly, but their styling and their performance, it does have a polish to it. And likewise, I think Russia are definitely could at least win the televote, because we know that they're going to
100%.
stage the hell of it. And if they have the license to stage it from their own studios, imagine what it's going to look like. The dark horse for me, which I think is a potential top 5 contender, would be Denmark, for the reason that I think it's the most positive and sunny song in the contest.
Do you think like Shanae and Nevergreen? It's a classier, less cheesy version of Shanae and Nevergreen.
It's a bit less twee because they are young and they're good looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of makes it less tacky when the people performing it just look like models.
Agreed.
I think she needs to Tan needs to work on her vocals a little bit, but that can be polished up. And I think that song is very catchy, and I think it will stand out a lot. And for the same reason, I think Bulgaria has an uplifting quality to it, especially with the key change, which I think maybe could circumvent how depressive it may be, especially compared to Switzerland, which is just kind of bleak and dark. So yeah, those are kind of the ones I'm really going to I would put money on if I was a betting man.
And for me, Nathan mentioned it earlier, my personal favorite is Germany. Like, I'm from Germany, it might be biased, but I think it's going to do at least as well as She Got Me last year. It has this love story, like seducing another person. It's very summery, it's very poppy, and I think it's going to do very well. And if they do the staging right, it's definitely a contender for the win. And if we also look at the possibility of broadcasting it from a studio, Germany definitely has the resources to put a lot of money into it, to stage the hell out of it. And we've already seen the 1-minute clip of him singing the 3-minute version of the song with the high note at the end, and he can sing it perfectly. So I also see a big jury appeal, which Switzerland had last year, kind of, but it not that much. So I think it's a really big contender for me. And I tweeted it earlier, but Symphonics, they have 3 songs in the race, and they are all contenders to win. And so I think this year might finally be Borislav Milanov's year to get the trophy for either Bulgaria, Malta, or Germany.
It's really funny you should say that, because that's probably the 3 I would say. But it's also Costa really nailed it with his last sentence. If I was a betting man, I'll have a flutter from time to time, and always when it comes to Eurovision. And I have this year, but I've only backed one act, and I would probably be inclined to back a couple more when we see rehearsals, but I think there is one standout act here that can charm the socks off the entire continent, and I thought at the moment it won its national final, and I do think it's Iceland. There are dark horses, and it would be remiss not to say Bulgaria, because of everything it offers is something that I think people would be looking for in an act that is accessible, particularly if they stage it nicely. Learn from Equinox, look back at Kostov, and find your holy ground somewhere in the middle of the two. And then it's not really a dark horse to say it, but Malta is absolutely in with a shout. And we talked about Sweden being positive and uplifting and being what people might want. I think Malta blows Sweden out of the water in the same category of song. Yes, it's soloist versus group, but broadly speaking, they are both in the same genre market. And I think that Malta just is. And can I sit here and say Destiny's not going to win? I can't. I physically can't say that Malta aren't going to win, because Destiny has that winning streak. She's got the Eurovision experience, yes, as a backing vocalist, but she's seen the circus. And I can't write off Malta. And I actually think the total opposite to Costa. I think Ukraine is in there as a possible top 5, because it's about the only one doing that job this year. I think it will come through the semi-final. And if you get to a big Saturday night, you stick Solove on around 22, and it's so vastly different from everything else. It has that ethnic appeal throughout. It really appeals to that type of voter that I can't see Solove not being top 10, and I can see it pushing top 5.
Yeah, I'd love that. Tim, dark horses. Dark horse.
Ooh, dark horses. See, the thing is that we say earlier on that we can't, where it's gonna be an open year, but all of a sudden I'm sort of like agreeing with like, let's say Nathan about that Malta is, Destiny has that winning streak, and we see that this woman can sing and she's got insane vocal range. So like it's impossible for me to rule her out. Another one would be, I'd say, Australia is kind of like, it's polished, but when you see like Montaigne perform it live, I'm kind of getting this like I don't know, kind of feeling where it's like she does it so well. So, and I think recently Australia's turned the tide where it's like, fine, and it's gone downhill and then it's gone back up again. So they're heading in the right direction, but I'd say another top 10, but I wouldn't rule it out. And like I said earlier on, Bulgaria, they've been working so hard ever since they've come back, like as they had that gap. And I think coming back right now, and the fact that she's worked with some awesome people who's got the Eurovision experience, I think she might beat Christian Kostov, but that's all I'm going to say about that.
Right, that kind of sums it up. As a closing remark, I would say that Destiny has got the full package in terms of it being a really good standalone pop song. Whereas I don't even think like the likes of Iceland outside the Eurovision context would be I guess it would, because it has the kind of viral elements of it, but I think it's a very Eurovision. It feels like Eurovision, whereas All My Love feels like a very expensive pop song that you would have seen like it reminds you of Ghost by Ella Henderson, or like some of Adele's material from 21. My issue, and something I'll caution, is that Malta tend to do far better with the juries than they do with the televote, and I don't think this is a televote song. So I think they will continue to like be screwed over by the televote.
I think a song that will also fly with the juries but fail with the televote is The Netherlands. It has this very expensive, complex feel to it, but it's still very uplifting. He can sing live. It builds nicely. And I think this is, for me, definitely set for a top 10 jury finish, maybe top 5. But then will be failed by the televote, because I think it will maybe drown among all the more fun entries we have. But I still would rate it as a dark horse, just because of the jury vote, where it will, I think, score very well.
My final remark is Switzerland have very much done a Bulgaria and have gone back and gone, okay, none of this works. What's going to work? And they've just pulled it out the back. Could you imagine, genuinely, 5 years ago, sitting back and going, yeah, Bulgaria versus Switzerland, lads, that's where we're at for 2020? No, absolutely not. In no scenario would any of us have sat here and gone, yeah, it's clearly Bulgaria or Switzerland who are going to have a win. Because that it just is unfathomable to me that that's actually a situation where we're in. And, we will always have nations like Italy that will turn up with a really popular pop song in its home nation. Professional juries are going to go for that. But Italy are going to do what Italy do and somehow float themselves into a top 10 position, because by and large they will get enough televotes to put them there and the jury will love it as they do. But my closing remark is Switzerland and Bulgaria are really going at it, but if there's a fun song that's going to slide through them, I think it could be Iceland, just for that viral nature. Everyone sits back on a Saturday night and goes, do you know, that was just what I needed. That's what I needed. Something that I'm in on the joke on, but is still a pop song I can relate to. It sounds 80s enough, but a modern version of that. You get the family story. Every commentator is going to sit back and go, this is Daddy. His wife and friends are the band. He's singing a song to his baby girl. That in itself is enough to push you over the edge, I think. And that's where I'm at.
Okay. Tim, closing remark.
Closing remark for me on this is never underestimate any act because because we don't know what the hell is gonna happen.
You getting off the fence in this closing remark?
I think that's fine. I'm accepting it.
Yeah, no, it's more the fact that like we say it's good and then all of a sudden when we're in Rotterdam it crashes out of the semi because this happens every single year. So that's what I would say. It's like we say all these things. So like let's say with Destiny, like you say we'll be fine. I'm pretty sure she'll sail through. That's gonna be no problem. But you know, it's for me it's just an open year that I can't give you a coherent and concise like prediction or anything. So what I say, like, don't underestimate anything just because of the fact that it's not doing well in the odds or like fans are not talking about it. So
I thought Malta were going to sail through last year, and look how wrong I was.
So yeah, I mean they're all 41 great. So I'm just saying some of them are already like some of them are like good contenders, but wait till we see how I see it on stage.
Yeah, wait and see is kind of the motto. If we go open up, it's wait and see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like you said, Nathan, regardless of what happens or what doesn't happen, we will always have these 41 songs.
Yeah.
And we as a community will find creative ways of making something happen. So on that note, thank you all for your time and thank you for watching. Follow ESCXTRA on all the social media platforms at ESCXTRA on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And also subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll be scraping together what we can from this horrific situation to make content from like everyone else, well, I'm sure. But yeah, thank you, and we'll see you soon.